What would you do if you held in your hands the power to create money from thin air? Not just any money, but bills so perfect that even seasoned cashiers couldn't tell the difference. Arthur Williams II had that power. But, as you might guess, it didn't come without a cost. How did this man who started as a petty thief in Chicago end up crafting millions of dollars in counterfeit bills that baffled the FBI? And more importantly, what led him to risk everything, again and again for the sake of the perfect counterfeit? Arthur Williams II wasn't born a criminal. He was born into poverty. In 1983, when Arthur was just 11 years old, his father walked out on him and his mother, leaving them stranded in the harsh realities of Chicago's South Side. It was a world where survival often meant breaking the rules. With no father and a mother struggling to make ends meet, Arthur quickly learned that the world wasn't going to give him anything for free. One day, when Arthur came home to an empty fridge, something inside him snapped. Anger and frustration boiled over as he wandered the streets. By chance, he stumbled upon a parking meter and, driven by desperation, tried to break into it. He succeeded. Using a makeshift tool, Arthur pried open the meter and pocketed the coins inside. That small act of theft fed him and his mother that night, but it also set him on a path that would eventually make him a legend in the world of crime. Arthur's early forays into crime were small-time, robbing parking meters and stealing from stores with his friends. But in 1987, when he was just 15, his life took a dramatic turn. He was caught trying to steal a car and ended up in a police station. But instead of spending time behind bars, he was bailed out by a man named Da Vinci, an older gentleman who had a secret relationship with Arthur's mother. Da Vinci wasn't just any man. He was a master counterfeiter. He took Arthur under his wing, leading him into an old, dilapidated building that served as his workshop. The smell of ink filled the air as Da Vinci showed Arthur the intricate process of printing counterfeit money. For the first time, Arthur realized that crime could be more than just smashing windows and stealing coins. It could be an art. Da Vinci taught Arthur everything: how to mix colors, create molds, and print bills that were nearly indistinguishable from the real thing. Arthur soaked it all in, seeing Da Vinci as the father figure he had lost. But just as quickly as Da Vinci had entered his life, he vanished. One day, he simply stopped coming around, leaving Arthur feeling abandoned once again. Life didn't get any easier for Arthur after Da Vinci disappeared. By 17, he was a father himself, struggling to provide for his son, Arthur III. Desperate for money, Arthur and his friends devised a new scheme: robbing drug dealers by posing as corrupt cops. It was dangerous, and it nearly got Arthur killed when a drug dealer's gang opened fire on him. Bleeding from a gunshot wound, Arthur barely survived the ordeal, which pushed him to leave Chicago for Texas in 1993. In Texas, Arthur tried to live an honest life. He worked hard, taking on low-paying jobs to support his son and distance himself from his criminal past. But then he met Natalie, a woman who would change everything. Natalie wasn't interested in Arthur's attempts at reform. She was fascinated by his criminal skills, especially his talent for counterfeiting. She urged him to start printing money again, not for someone else, but for themselves. The temptation was too great, and Arthur eventually gave in. Using the skills Da Vinci had taught him, Arthur began printing counterfeit bills in small quantities. But it wasn't until 1996, when the US government released a new, high-security $100 bill, that Arthur faced his greatest challenge. The new bill was designed to be nearly impossible to counterfeit, with features like color-shifting ink and a hidden watermark. Most would have seen this as the end of the road, but for Arthur it was just the beginning of his masterpiece. Arthur was relentless in his pursuit of perfection. He and Natalie spent months experimenting with different types of paper, searching for one that matched the feel of real currency. After countless failures, they finally found what they were looking for in the most unexpected place: a phone book. The paper used for the phone book's pages had the same chemical properties as the paper used by the Federal Reserve, making it perfect for their counterfeiting operation. But the paper was just the beginning. Arthur needed to replicate the color-shifting ink used on the new $100 bills. Inspiration struck one day when he saw a car with a custom paint job that changed colors depending on the angle of the light. Arthur tracked down the company that made the paint and discovered that they also produced the ink used by the US government. With the right ink and paper in hand, Arthur was ready to create his masterpiece. The printing process was labor-intensive. Arthur had to press the bills multiple times to achieve the perfect color and texture. He painstakingly applied the watermark, security strip, and serial numbers, ensuring that each bill was as close to the real thing as possible. And when he finally finished, the result was stunning. Even experienced cashiers and bank tellers couldn't tell the difference between Arthur's bills and genuine currency. For the next few years, Arthur and Natalie lived a life of luxury, funded by their flawless counterfeit money. They printed up to $50,000 a month, spending it cautiously to avoid drawing attention. They moved frequently, never staying in one place for too long, and used their counterfeit bills to buy goods that they could later sell for real money. Life was good, until Arthur decided to return to Chicago in 2000. Back in his hometown, Arthur reconnected with old friends and introduced them to his counterfeiting operation. He showed them the bills he had printed, and they were amazed. But Arthur wasn't just looking to impress his friends. He wanted to expand his operation. By working with his friends who had connections in nightclubs, restaurants, and casinos, Arthur could launder his money more effectively. Arthur's bills soon spread across the country, attracting the attention of the FBI. They knew there was a new player in the counterfeiting game, and they were determined to catch him. But Arthur was always one step ahead. He began selling his counterfeit bills to criminal organizations, including the Russian mafia and the Italian mob. For every $100,000 he printed, he could sell it for $30,000 in real money, a deal that was too good for the gangs to pass up. But dealing with criminals came with its own risks. Arthur became increasingly paranoid, convinced that someone would betray him. He carried a bug detector everywhere he went, scanning for hidden microphones and cameras. His paranoia reached new heights in 2002, when he attended a party thrown by the Russian mafia. At the party, held in a lavish hotel, Arthur was supposed to deliver $60,000 in counterfeit bills to his Russian contacts. He checked into his room, but before he could relax, there was a knock at the door.
I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. I don't think so. No, 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 no. Maybe someday you'll have it your way. Maybe someday it'll all work out. Maybe someday you'll have it your way. Maybe someday it'll all work out. Until then, nope, a nope, a nope, a nope, definitely nope, a nope, nope, a nope. Probably never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. Oh no.
Quality wasn't the same. Something was off, and Arthur knew it. Still, his father was eager to use the money. He gave some of it to his wife, who, in turn, gave it to their neighbors. The neighbors, too foolish to realize the risk, spent the counterfeit bills without laundering them first. It wasn't long before they were caught, and the police quickly traced the money back to Arthur's father. When they searched his home, they found all the evidence they needed to arrest him and to implicate Arthur. Back in Texas, Arthur was trying to live a quiet life with Natalie, but his past caught up with him. The FBI raided his home, but Arthur had been careful. He kept nothing incriminating in the house. Still, The testimony of his father's wife was enough to get him arrested. Arthur was sentenced to 3 years in prison, while his father received 5 years. Arthur's time in prison was hard, but it gave him a chance to reflect on his life. He vowed to leave his criminal past behind for good and focus on building a future with his son. But fate had other plans. Shortly after Arthur was released in 2004, his father died in prison, a final blow that left Arthur reeling. Back in Chicago, Arthur struggled to make ends meet. He took low-paying jobs, working as a waiter and even cleaning bathrooms, just to provide for his son. The counterfeit money he had buried in the woods was a constant temptation, but Arthur resisted, determined to stay on the right path. In 2005, Rolling Stone published an article about Arthur, calling him the greatest money forger in the world. His son, Arthur III, read the article and was both amazed and troubled by what he learned. One day, Arthur III decided to try counterfeiting himself. He scanned a bill and printed it using a home printer, just to see if he could do it. When Arthur found out what his son was doing, he was horrified. He confronted his son, and their argument spilled out into the street, where they were spotted by a passing police car. The police stopped to investigate, and Arthur, trying to defuse the situation, assured them that everything was fine. But when they checked his ID, they called for backup. The FBI arrived, and Arthur was arrested once again, this time for the counterfeit bills he had been using to get by. This time, the evidence against Arthur was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison, while his son was sent to a juvenile detention center. The FBI tried to turn Arthur III against his father, but he refused to cooperate. In prison, Arthur sank into deep despair. He felt like a failure, as a father, as a son, and as a man. But prison also gave him time to think, to reflect on the choices he had made and the consequences of those choices. Arthur III, meanwhile, was determined to follow in his father's footsteps. After being released from juvenile detention, he started his own counterfeiting operation. But his bills were crude, more like scanned copies than the high-quality work his father had produced. In 2009, at the age of 18, he was caught red-handed by the FBI. When Arthur heard about his son's arrest, he was devastated. He blamed himself for leading his son down the same path that had ruined his own life. Desperate to reconnect with his son, Arthur requested a transfer to the same prison, and it was granted. The two spent the next few years together, growing closer than ever as they shared their dreams of a better future. In 2015, Arthur was finally released from prison. This time, he was determined to make a fresh start. He turned to art, using the skills he had honed as a counterfeiter to create works that were both beautiful and meaningful. His paintings, which often incorporated elements of currency, became highly sought after, selling for tens of thousands of dollars each. Arthur Williams II had finally found a way to use his talents for good, leaving behind the life of crime that had defined him for so long. Instead of printing fake money, he was creating real art that told the story of his life, his mistakes, and his ultimate redemption. And in doing so, he proved that even the greatest counterfeiter in history could change his ways and find a new path forward.